Hey everyone, this is Mathmetrics. Welcome to episode 12 of Mixing Loud with Clip to Zero. In this video, I'll explain some considerations for collaboration with other producers if you use the CTZ approach to loudness and gain staging. Before I get into it, quick reminder, this is part of an ongoing series called Mixing Loud with Clip to Zero. I'm assuming you've seen earlier episodes. So if you haven't seen this yet, maybe catch up, maybe subscribe to my channel so that you can be aware of future episodes that are still coming. We're down here at episode 12, but I've still got these topics I'm going to be talking about in this playlist. So this will be a nice short video for a change. I don't have to demonstrate much or talk about too much. It's a pretty simple concept. Collaboration with other producers, it's a bit of an art form. Not everyone likes collaboration. Not everyone's good at it. And I've definitely seen new producers coming up, struggle with the best way to do collaboration. It can be awfully easy if you could just share a DAW project file back and forth, but that assumes you're using the same DAW. That assumes you have all the same plugins as each other so that when, you use a certain plugin in your side of the project and then you save the project and pass the file off to the person you're collaborating with, and they open the project, they better have that same exact plugin and that same plugin version, or it's not an apples to apples sharing back and forth of the same exact thing, right? So in the real world, the only practical way to do collaboration is to throw stems back and forth at each other. So you kind of each have your own version of the project that you're managing separately and independently. And let's say on your side, you build up a new kind of top layer for the drum track. And you have a new track now that you've produced on your side. And what you do is you use your DAW's export audio capability, same thing used to print masters, but instead of printing the whole master, you choose certain buses or individual tracks to export to an audio file. We call that a stem. And then you give the stem to your partner. And they take that stem and add it into their project file. And now they're hearing what you built in the context of their thing. So we call this throwing stems back and forth or sharing stems. And it's the only way to really collaborate effectively with lots of different people, okay? And where you might run into a little confusion at first, I was surprised. I didn't think about this much, but somebody asked me a question on one of my videos once. It's like, well, if I'm working really loud with the CTZ approach, but the person I'm collaborating with doesn't, what does that mean? Do I need to do anything different with the stems I give them? Or, what do I need to do with the stems they make on their side and they hand over to me? That's kind of an interesting question. So let's see if I can tackle that. Ultimately, the best thing to do is both of you understand and use the clip to zero approach. And ultimately, you kind of almost have to do that. Otherwise, spectrally, your stems aren't going to be matching each other. It's not going to sound like these different stems from 2 or 3 different people. It's not going to sound like all these stems belong together in the same project. One of you, the person that's using the CTZ approach, is going to be making certain mixing decisions, like a certain amount of saturation, a certain amount of clipping, specific kind of EQ choices. You're doing all these things to make everything sound good when it's working in a very small, tight, dynamic range. So the whole RMS or LUFS can be very loud right up with the peaks touching 0 full scale. Okay. You're working that way. But if your partner or partners aren't working that way, and they're working in the old school way with their gain staging way down around -18, -12, -23 on the meters, and they're not thinking about how their peaks are summing up together, all their transients from different sounds, how they're summing. They're not making those kind of same EQ decisions. They're not saturating things as much as you are. They're not clipping. Okay, if if you get something like that, if you get stems from them like that and you put them in your project, their stems are going to be sounding a little dark, a little weak, um, not as hot and dense as your tracks that you're producing on your side. And you could say, well, let me just, push their tracks up into a clipper to get it as loud as my tracks. And that'll help a little bit, but it's not the full treatment, right? It's only the clipping part. Okay, you could say, well, let me try to saturate their track a little bit, their stem, saturate it a little bit, and then push the rest through a clipper and see if I can get close to my sound that way. And yeah, you could do that and it might help a little bit, but it's still, you can't guarantee that the person you're collaborating with, you can't guarantee that they have thought about EQ the same way you have, that they've thought about the stereo field the same way you have, that they've made other decisions that aren't just clipping and saturation. Maybe they're picking sounds that, at their level of gain staging, the sound is great. But as soon as you try to saturate it and clip it to fit it up into a small dynamic range to match the rest of the stuff you're doing on your side, that sound might fall apart with that much clipping and or saturation, right? It might start sounding fuzzed out, tubby, rubbery, right? It just all depends. And so ultimately, it is best if you can convince your partner that you're collaborating with to also understand the CTZ approach and work in the CTZ approach so that you're really sharing stems that are meant to coexist nicely with each other. That's ultimately the answer. There is no magic silver bullet here for you working in a CTZ way and your collab partner not. Okay, you kind of both have to do it ultimately. So help them step up to the plate, encourage them to go learn the CTZ approach and coach them through the parts that they may struggle with at first because it's kind of new and different. That's okay. But ultimately, I think your goal should be to throw stems back and forth that are the same level of density and hotness with the same kind of mixing decisions made on both sides. That's my best advice on this front. Other than that, I don't see a good way to handle this, right? It's just not going to work well to have one of you working loud and one of you not working loud. I hope that's common sense. I hope my thoughts and comments about this have helped, and I'll see you in the next episode.